All right, we look forward to the next lesson, Healthy Communication Between Parents and Children by Brother Peter Chin. Just to give you a very, very brief introduction of Brother Peter Chin, I think he's no stranger to most of us. And just like Brother Tien Sing, Brother Peter Chin used to be one of the elders at Lima Pin as well. So by virtue of that, he is, I think, more than qualified to speak to us on this topic. He is married to Sister Pui Fan. I believe this November it will be for 38 years. And we know his two children, Andy and Willie, who I believe had joined us this morning as well. Both of them are active members in the church at Kota Kemuning Church of Christ. And so we look forward to learning some important lessons about communication between parents and children. So I'll now pass the time to Brother Chin.
Hello, everyone. We welcome you to the second session for today's seminar on the family. And we're going to be talking about the communication that is healthy between parents and children. The word healthy can be defined as sound, that contribute to something that is sound and acceptable. And the opposite of that word would be unsound or unhealthy. So we want to look at what the Bible has got to offer to us with regards to this. And first, we begin by saying that children are indeed a blessing from the Lord. Psalm 127, verse 3, Lo, children are an heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward. However you look at it, at the word heritage, basically the meaning is that children are a blessing, or you can also translate it as an inheritance or a gift from the Lord, as is translated by the contemporary English version. And this is very true, where some people, they know that the children are the blessing from the Lord. They can even think of coming up with various ways to see children as a blessing. And this author, for example, is able to identify 12 ways. But regardless of that, although babies and children, when they come to us as babies, they are cute, they are cuddly, they are adorable. Each one of them, whether a boy or a girl, is going to grow up. It's going to become a person, an adult with a soul, and it's going to complete life's cycle. So therefore, we have to look beyond the time when they are cute and cuddly and adorable. In 1989, a man by the name of Stephen R. Covey published his very successful book that spawned off several other books with the same similar title, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And this became so popular that it sold for more than 40 million copies, translated into 40 different languages. But in one of these 7 habits of highly effective people, the second habit is interesting. And he says that we need to begin with the end in mind. Every endeavor of ours, whatever it is that we begin, including starting a family, we need to begin with the end in mind. What does it mean? So we look to him to explain what he means by this. He says that to begin with the end in mind means to start with a clear understanding of your destination. It means to know where you are going so that you better understand where you are now, so that the steps that you take are always in the right direction. So basically what he means by this is that before you begin to embark on a certain endeavor, you know where you are going. What is your destination? What is your goal? What are you setting for yourself? When you know your destination, then the journey there will be easier because you know where you are heading. This is a principle that comes from the Bible itself. Our Lord Jesus Christ gave a teaching that's similar to this principle on the unfinished tower, recorded in Luke 14, verses 28 to 30. In this passage, he asked a question. He says, for which one of you intending to build a tower seated not down first and counted the cost, whether he had sufficient to finish it. Less happily, after he had laid the foundation and is not able to finish it, all that behold it began to mock him, saying, This man began to build and was not able to finish. So the point is that anyone, any person, before he begins on a project, including building a tower, would first of all consider the reason for building a tower, including the cost that is needed, the time, the effort. And that certainly includes the reason why he's building the tower. So when people want to start a family, when they want to have children, right, they need to ask themselves, why is it that they want to have children? And there are many common reasons why people want to have children. And someone has actually interviewed parents and then put together these reasons and then put them in the form of an article that was written. So it applies to us as well, especially when you think about this principle, begin with the end in mind. As you think about starting a family, and this even applies to those of us who already have children in a family, we need to think about our journey there, our goals, our objective, our purpose in having children in our life. As we think about this, what we are really doing is to plan towards success in becoming parents. We want to be sure that we're doing the right thing, and it is not just about them being a joy to us. We need also to ensure that their lives are fulfilling. That's because we brought them into the world. They didn't ask to be born. And since we brought them into the world, we therefore must help them to find their life on earth to be fulfilling. The Lord has indeed blessed Sister Puifan and I with two sons, and we enjoy our parenthood tremendously. We have a wonderful relationship with our two sons. We spend a lot of time together in their growing up years. And today they are adults. And we're very proud of the way that they have turned out. And our youngest son, Willie, was married in 2018. And together with his wife, Sarah, they're now going to be proud parents by the end of this year. Both Andy and Willie are faithful, active members of the Kota Kemuning congregation in Malaysia. They are serving and they are teaching and preaching and leading in ministries. Both my wife and I did not grow up in Christian homes. So as we were planning towards starting a family and having children, we set our goals on bringing up our children the Lord's way. And that's the destination that we set for ourselves, that when they grew up, they are going to know the Lord. And that we are going to be parenting our children according to the way of the Lord, the Lord's way. So this is something that's very important for us because it comes from the scriptures itself. From this passage in Ephesians 6, right, you have this injunction given by the Apostle Paul to the church in Ephesus. And writing to the fathers, he said, And ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Right? The parenting style, the way to raise them, the way to train them must be the Lord's way. So that's the reason for us to decide on adopting this method to bring up our children. So as you look at an overview of this epistle by Paul to the church in Ephesus, he's talking to members of the church who are in various situations in their life. And he's going to be talking about marriage, the husband, the wife, and some were slaves and some were masters. And many are, of course, children in the family, and others are parents in the family. So whatever the situation is in your life, in any one of these capacities that you serve, he says, remember that the journey as Christian is going to be filled with difficulty. We are going to be withstanding against the wiles of the devil. So, in one of those things that we need to do, he says, you must put on the breastplate of righteousness. In other words, live righteously, live according to the teachings of the Bible, live in a situation where you are in a right relationship with God. Why so? Why live righteously? It's because Paul had already said in a separate letter to the church at Corinth, he says, only the righteous will inherit the kingdom of heaven. So an unrighteous man cannot be ushered into eternity to spend eternity with God. So therefore, the overall purpose of us raising up our children is actually to teach our children to have a relationship with God. And so we train them to be righteous so that eventually, since we brought them into the world, we will be able to see them in eternity when this life is over. For thou, Lord, will bless the righteous, and God will look upon the righteous with favor, and God will protect him, watch over him. And the righteous is going to bring joy to his parents as well, to his father, to his mother. And he not only is righteous, but from God's perspective, he is considered as a wise child. And therefore, the one who is going to be able to help him to be righteous is the Father. Solomon said this, my son, give me thine heart and let thine eyes observe my ways. So the fathers are the one who is going to live the life of righteousness so that their children can observe them and follow after their example. Not only are we to bring up our children to be righteous, hopefully we will produce generations of righteous people. Children's children are the crown of old men, and the glory of children are their fathers. And what this means, according to the contemporary English version, is grandparents are proud of their grandchildren, and children should be proud of their parents as well. So when you take pride in seeing your children being righteous and they raise up righteous children, we're all involved in producing generations of righteous people. Let's look at God and his role. He is also a father. He is father of all in the sense that we're all offsprings of God. Every human being, regardless of nationality and faith, everywhere in the world is an offspring of God, and therefore God is their father. But in another sense, God is also our spiritual father, especially to those who are his adopted children. And the following verse in Galatians 3:27 says, for as many of you as have been baptized into Christ. So how do we become children of God? When we have been baptized into Christ. So when we enter into the church, Jesus is the head of the church, and God, it becomes our spiritual fathers in heaven. So as a father, therefore, God is a parent himself. And this is especially so true about Adam. And Adam is mentioned by Luke as a son of God. He was the son of God, not the only begotten son of God, which is our Lord Jesus Christ, but because Adam is one of his offspring, springs forth from God, right? Originates from God. Therefore, Adam is the son of God, and God was his father. We're going to look at the relationship between God and Adam and draw principles with regards to the kind of healthy communication that we should have with our children from the book of Genesis. Four principles that contribute to healthy communication between parents and children. And these are the four principles that we're going to be looking at. Number one, clarity in communication. And number two, non-verbal communication. Number three, interpersonal communication. And number four, empathic communication. We're going to be looking at each one of them. And the first one is the fact that God communicates his will to Adam, not to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And so this is where we learn from the fact that when God communicates this to Adam, he commanded the man. And he said to Adam that of every tree of the garden thou mayest eat freely, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat. So God communicates to Adam by giving him an instruction. And that instruction indicates to us that those who are parents need to take charge of the family. This is what God says about Abraham. God said, "For I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him." So those of us who are parents need to take note that this is God's expectation of us who are parents, all right? To take charge of the family, to instruct, to lead, to command. And every parent is supposed to take charge of the family, and the man in the family is expected to rule. And the one who rules well is the one who is qualified by God to serve as an elder. So God expects every man of the family, every father in the family to rule, to take charge, to preside over, or to exercise authority over the family. But in his role as the head of a family, he's also assisted by his wife. Proverbs 6:20 says, "My son, keep thy father's commandment and forsake not the law of thy mother." So as you can see, both father and mother, they are both involved in taking charge of the family. Many years ago, in the 1960s, a developmental psychologist by the name of Diana Baumrind developed and proposed theories regarding parenting styles. And these are the four parenting styles: the authoritative, the authoritarian, the permissive, and the uninvolved or neglectful. Based on our understanding of the scriptures and what parents are supposed to do, it comes up to us with the understanding that the kind of parenting style that we need to have seems to fit into this one that this psychologist has proposed, and that is the authoritative, not authoritarian, but authoritative, where the relationship in this setting of a family between parents and children is a demanding one, where parents expect much of the children, but parents are very supportive of their children. And the parenting style is child-centered. And it is about building mutual trust and respect. And both the perspective of the parents and the child, they are honored. And that is a two-way communication that flows between the parents and the children. So this is something that is that is in agreement with the scriptures, not authoritarian, where that is only a one-way communication, and the man of the house takes control of everything, and he does not release the idea of any kind of opposition to his will. Neither is it to be the permissive type of parenting, where no one's take charge. Anyone can do anything, anyone can say anything. And sometimes children are in charge. They are the one making all the demands. So that is a permissive kind of a setting which is frowned upon and not ideal to our purpose as Christian parents. Then there is the one that is uninvolved, where parents are detached from their family. Again, that would not be the kind of parenting style that we are looking at. So as we look at this parenting style, the parents are very supportive, communicative, and the children raised in such a household, according to this theory, they have high self-esteem, not in a negative way, but in a positive way, with good social skills and being able to do well academically. So as we look at that relationship that God had with Adam, not only do parents take charge of the family, but there is clarity, because God said to both Adam and Eve, "Ye shall not eat of the fruit." So they understood it very well. And today, children will not be able to obey their parents unless the communication with them are clear. And one of those clear things they need to understand is that children are subordinate to their parents. And this is God's order for the family, where children submit themselves to their parents, where the wife in the family submits to the husband, where both and all in the family submits to Christ. So the permissive kind of a parenting style does not fit with this biblical order of things. So as parents look into taking charge of the family, they need to set clear boundaries, set rules in the family. Here's an example of the house rules that a family has set up. And sometimes adults themselves are not clear in the communication. For example, the major accident on the sign along the highway, left lanes closed, use left lane. So you can imagine the kind of confusion that's going to cause to people, and it will pile up into a jam. So that's the first principle that we have to look at: clarity in communication. No clarity, no healthy communication. Secondly, God communicates with Adam through providing for him. Sometimes God's communication with Adam is verbal, where he said to them, thou, to him and his wife, thou shalt not eat of it. Sometimes it's non-verbal. For example, God provided food for Adam and for Eve. God provided a tree of life where they are meant to live for eternity. And God saw that Adam was alone, and God said, this is not good. I will provide a companion for him. All of these are non-verbal communication, and it shows God's concern, God's love, God's care, God's support. And so if God will be speaking to Adam, he will be saying this, just like he said to the Israelite much later during the time of Isaiah. He'll be saying, do not fear. I'm always with you. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you. And that's what we do in our parenting style. In our parenting style, we learn that sometimes we need to communicate with our children using non-verbal communication, as well as understanding our children when they speak to us non-verbally. There is a psychologist who is a professor of psychology at the University of California. He came up with this 738-55 rule. And he says that in any kind of communication that you are involved in, when a person speaks to you, he says that what the person really is saying in terms of words is only 7%. What he's really saying through his voice, to the tone of his voice, 38%. And what he's really saying through his body language, it comprises of 55%. So therefore, there we need to recognize that in our communication with our children, the things that we do for them non-verbally is a way of communicating our love, care, and support to them. So as we engage with them in all kinds of situations in their life, seizing upon the opportunity to spend time with them, we are actually communicating to them our love, our care, and support. And we need to look to material that can help us. Here's an example of one, an essential non-verbal communication skill that parents can develop in communicating with our children. So there are things that we should avoid, right? Children, for example, at a very young age, we are beginning to convey to them that we don't really care for them. When parents, for example, are spending a lot of time on their tablets and on their phone, right? When children need their attention to communicate, to interact. And it is a very pathetic thing sometimes when you look at families where so many parents, instead of communicating to their children, instead of saying, I love you, you are important to me, you matter to me, but our non-verbal communication is telling them otherwise. Next, we look at God and how he communicates with Adam face to face. Right? And Adam at one time heard the voice of the Lord walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and Adam and his wife hid themselves. God is a spirit, right? God is not physical, but God's voice was with Adam at the garden. So in a sense, it was a face-to-face conversation. So the third principle we want to look at is the interpersonal communication. Parents are involved in bringing up their children, and the father is given that responsibility to bring them up or to rear them to maturity. And we cannot rear them up to maturity and be involved in training them if we do not have an interpersonal communication. And the way to bring up a child in the way that he should go, the way to bring up a child, according to one commentator, is that whatever the child's occupation is going to be in future, for example, he's going to grow up to be a carpenter because his father is a carpenter, or he's going to grow up to be a priest, or he's going to grow up to be a Levite to serve in the temple. Then at a very early age, right? At a very early age, then the parents are to understand that he is going to be serving in that capacity. So they spend their time to train them from the time that they're young by understanding his nature, his character, by understanding his faculties, his aptitude, his ability, and by understanding his temperament, his emotional state, and thereby using all of this to help mold him to the kind of occupation that he is supposed to fulfill in his life. So therefore, all of this means that we need to have relationships with our children. We cannot have proper relationship with our children if we rule over our family through proxies, through domestic helpers, through nannies, through grandparents who are taking care of them, and so on and so forth. And this is certainly the problem that we have in the world today, where parents, instead of seizing upon opportunities to develop relationship, they're not doing that. And so therefore, we need to understand that when we are uninvolved, we are more concerned for our own entertainment or our work and our career, then that's one of those parenting styles that is to be avoided. And then number 4, God communicates with Adam regarding his expectations, his relationship consequences for actions, and so on. God asked Adam several questions. He asked him, and he's concerned about his welfare. He said, "Where are you, Adam? All right. Did you eat of the tree? Did you eat of the tree which I commanded you not to eat? And what is it that you have done?" God asked him, and Adam responds. So there is a communication between the both of them. So that tells us that there is to be an emphatic kind of communication that we need to have with our children, where mentally we're entering into the sphere of the feelings of our children, and we appreciate their perception, their understanding. We're trying to understand them emotionally and intellectually, and it fits this maxim where it is said that we must seek first to understand before we can be understood. And that's certainly very true, right? We cannot expect our children to understand us when we don't first seek to understand what they're going through in their life. So as we spending time with our children in all sorts of circumstances and situations to bond with them, it helps us to understand the great need to communicate with them, to listen to them, and to interact with them in such a way where we are sympathetic to not only their joys and triumphs, but also to their difficulties, to their pains, and to their suffering. We can communicate our expectations to them. And there are rules that we would expect them to follow. For example, someone has written this and said that when he or she visits a family member, a friend, a sibling, all right, in somewhere else, living somewhere else, they prepare the children first, and they tell the children, "This is what I would like for you to do when we reach your house. Always say, please, thank you, address people, adults, be nice to them, say hello," and so on. So that's just an example of how we communicate our expectations. So as we look at these 4 principles, right, the need for clarity in communication, non-verbal communication, interpersonal communication, empathic communication. Each one of these principles will contribute towards healthy communications that we're going to have with our parents and children. And hopefully we become better parents. It will develop trust. It will develop understanding and bond. And we will be able to overcome any kind of difficulties together with our children, helping them to enjoy life, helping them to live a life of fulfillment, and especially developing a relationship with God, where throughout their life, they remain faithful, active, and righteous, preparing for eternity. Thank you very much for your time.